Today is an Opentoonz quick tip. Things are progressing. We're moving through, putting some subtitles, getting some new shots in the show. Everything's humming along. But I want to show you if you are doing things the way I do it, which is to let's use this as an example. Actually, no, this is a poor example. Let's use a different one. I'm going to load a scene. Yeah, this is better. Okay. So when I did my storyboards and ink and paint, what I did was I simply put in the keyframes that I knew I was going to need to tell my story. And so this Opentoonz scene has, I'm going to say, probably at least a couple minutes of show within this one Opentoonz scene. So what I was going to do, and actually the scene that I loaded a moment ago was done this way, was take each of these shots, collapse them into a sub-X sheet, and then, as I had described in another video, and this is still a legitimate way to work, okay, so you don't want to discard it, but at the same time you don't want to take anything I say as gospel because I'm learning all the time. Okay. You can actually see this sub-X sheet right here is actually collapsed from these first two frames. Okay. So the problem with that is really just a logistical one. It's a bit of a hassle, which is if you hit Control 0, or I'm sorry, Control O to go into your render settings, what you find you have to do is change the frame range and the file name for every single time you want to render, which seems like, well, that's no big deal, except that because it's all contained in one Opentoonz scene, that means that every time I go back to another sub-X sheet and make a change, which basically happens a lot, I have to redo all of that housekeeping in order to render it out. Well, that's not the end of the world, but I couldn't help thinking, is there a better way? And the better way, initially I was going to take this and just use Alt down and Alt up arrow, which for me is insert and remove frame. I set up those hotkeys to just expand the shots out and then go ahead and develop them. That's not a bad way of working either, but it can get pretty big. You're going to get into some pretty big scene files. Okay, so the sub-X sheet, collapsing it down into a single sub-X sheet that contains just that one shot, is a pretty elegant solution. I had really hoped that the render settings could be preserved for each sub-X sheet, but they can't. And there's a couple other things about the output settings that I noticed that were a little problematic. So it made me think, okay, maybe I need to do a compromise between the two approaches, which is to go ahead and create a bunch of independent Opentoonz scenes. So the way I did that was, if let's just say this one was already done, then what I would do is, and my scenes are numbered, okay, so this might be scene 20. What I would do is delete a couple frames until I see a new shot, and then immediately save this Toonz file as scene number 30. Oh, there's another shot. There's scene 31. So I would save all these Toonz files, in which I have at this point almost 200 individual Toonz files. Okay, so that's all well and good. So now I've broken the show up into individual scenes. It maybe took a half an hour to go ahead and create all those new scene files, and so now it's cool because I can just go into each one of them and do what I need to do. There is again some housekeeping required, because if this were in fact scene 31, I would really want to take all of this stuff from top to bottom and delete it all, just so that I have only this scene stuff inside this particular scene file and X sheet. The problem is, and it's a big problem that you want to it's not a big problem to solve, but it's something you really want to be aware of or it will bite you. Okay, if I pull up scene number 54, I'm going to discard the changes there. What is really important to understand is that, and it looks like scene 54 actually goes up to here. So in this case, everything from here down will get deleted. Okay. Now, the cleanup process of getting rid of those would actually be easier if I did use the functionality of removing frames, because then I can just go ahead and it literally removes everything, including keys. Doesn't take that long. The problem is that, so now I'm going to go ahead and clean this scene up a bit. So now I have everything that I need to work with to go ahead and deal with this shot. The problem is that these Toonz raster levels, these are still pointing to the one Toonz raster level that is referenced in the original long complex scene that tells the whole story. So I'm strongly recommending what you want to do is, let me see where it is on the, I have it set up as a hotkey, Control Shift C, but I believe what we want to do is actually go across here and we're looking for clone. I think it's in cells. Yes, cells, clone. Okay, so you go cells and clone, and you want to rename it, and you want to apply to all, so every single one of these levels gets cloned. Okay, and now delete these out of the scene file. Now, shot number 54 has a unique set of levels, and all these files have now, when I hit save all, they will all get saved in their own unique folders. And so it actually does two things for me. One is keeps things clean. The problem you're going to have is you are going to want to like put some in-betweens in here and change something. And the minute you start introducing new drawings to any of these levels, when you go back to the original scene file, it's going to be out of sync. So anytime you actually go in and change these Toonz raster levels, you run the risk of breaking the original that you created originally. Because what seems to be happening is that you would think, say, if I expanded this out and added another drawing here, that whatever drawing I add, okay, so I just added one, it gave it the number 3. You would think that that would just be appended onto the list of drawings in the original level. And under the hood, I'm not totally clear on what's going on, but the upshot of it is that Opentoonz does get confused. I've seen it happen before, and today I had to restore this TLV file, which represents the Toonz raster level, from a backup in order to get things back to normal. So working this way, yeah, we've got a little bit of housekeeping to do, but it can all be done in one swoop. You know, you take an hour, and now you've taken, gosh, in my case, 6 or 7 minutes of show, which represents tons of work, and you've broken it all up into individual scenes and sort of cleaned up your workspace, and it all gets done in about an hour. So it's a price you have to pay, but it's a good price to pay to keep things organized. By doing that, you don't run the risk of breaking what you did before. And then also remember, the other thing this does for you is it gives you the ability at any time, if you had to, you could get back to the original file here, and if you really botch something up and you want to just start from scratch, which doesn't happen often, but it can happen, at least you can get back to it. So again, it's the cell menu, clone. I would recommend anytime you're going to break a scene up into individual pieces, go ahead and clone the cells, which effectively clones the levels, and that way you completely eliminate any possibility of corruption between the two. So that's kind of the Opentoonz quick tip for the day, because dealing with that problem kind of took up a little bit of time this morning, and I've got other things I need to get to for some clients and whatnot. So with that, I will bid you adieu and encourage you once again to clone liberally. If there's any doubt whether you know what level you're working with, and remember what I mean by that is, if there's any doubt that this might be pointing, so in other words, you've got a scene file that has a folder in the Opentoonz, stuff folder, right? If there's any doubt in your mind whether a level you're working with is pointing to a level that's part of that scene natively as opposed to pointing to something somewhere else, play it safe. Clone the cells and go from there.